I'm Audrey Crawford, 32 years old. 2 months ago, on Thanksgiving night, my parents humiliated me in front of 30 relatives. They gave my older sister a $13,000 luxury Caribbean cruise. Then they handed me a crumpled $2 lottery ticket. And everyone laughed. My mother smiled while she did it. This feels more appropriate for your situation, Audrey. The whole room heard her. My father laughed quietly into his wine glass. My brother-in-law Marcus smirked like he was watching a comedy show. Even my sister Vivian giggled behind her hand. At that moment, I thought the humiliation would destroy me. I didn't know that tiny lottery ticket was about to destroy everything instead. But not in the way anyone expected. To understand how it all happened, I need to take you back to Thanksgiving night. The night my family finally revealed who they really were. The Crawford family treated Thanksgiving like a performance. Not a warm family holiday. A performance. Everyone had a role. Dad played the proud provider. Mom played the perfect hostess. Vivian played the successful golden child. And me? I played the quiet daughter who worked in the background and never caused problems. I arrived at exactly 5 o'clock carrying a homemade autumn salad and flowers from my garden. Deep burgundy dahlias. I had spent 3 months growing them. My mother opened the front door before I could knock. Her eyes moved from my face to the flowers. Oh. Audrey. Then she gave a thin smile. Still playing with plants, I see. Before I could answer, squealing came from the driveway. Vivian had arrived. Mom rushed right past me. There's my girl. She hugged Vivian tightly while I stood alone in the doorway still holding the flowers. Vivian laughed softly. Mom, stop. You're going to ruin my dress. It's beautiful, Mom said proudly. Marcus spoils you. Of course he did. Marcus always knew how to look successful. Inside, the house buzzed with relatives. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. People I barely knew. Dad sat in his recliner talking loudly with Marcus about investments and business deals. He barely looked at me. Audrey. Good. Help your mother set the table. That was it. No hug. No welcome. Just instructions. I carried dishes into the dining room while everyone crowded around Marcus listening to his stories. He talked like he owned the world. Real estate. Luxury clients. Consulting deals. Everyone listened carefully. I watched quietly from the corner. Something about Marcus always bothered me. He smiled too much. Talked too smoothly. Like he was always selling something. But I never had proof. Only instincts. While I folded napkins, Mom introduced me to some distant cousin. This is Audrey. She does gardening. I looked up immediately. Landscape architecture, I corrected softly. I design outdoor spaces for businesses. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Same thing. Everyone moved on. I kept folding napkins. Some battles weren't worth fighting. At least not yet. Later, I walked into the kitchen to refill the water pitcher. That's when I heard them. Mom. Dad. Vivian. The kitchen door was slightly open. The cruise leaves December 15th, Mom whispered excitedly. 2 full weeks in the Caribbean. Vivian squealed. The kids are going to love it. Dad laughed. Marcus earned this. My stomach tightened. Then Vivian asked casually, what about Audrey? Silence. Long silence. Finally Dad cleared his throat. She's busy with work. Mom added quickly, and trips like this are expensive. We didn't want her to feel uncomfortable, Vivian said. I stood frozen. They weren't inviting me. Not because they couldn't afford it. Because they didn't want me there. I pushed the kitchen door open. 3 guilty faces turned toward me. I'm not invited? Mom forced a smile instantly. Oh sweetheart, don't make this dramatic. It's more of a family celebration, Dad added. Family. That word hurt more than anything. Vivian crossed her arms. You're always working anyway, Audrey. We thought you wouldn't care. Independent. That was their favorite word for me. Independent meant lonely. Independent meant forgotten. Independent meant nobody had to care about my feelings. Before I could answer, I noticed someone standing in the hallway. Grandma Grace. Tiny. Frail. Holding her walker. But her eyes were sharp. Always sharp. She looked directly at me with sadness so deep it almost broke my heart. Then she reached out and squeezed my hand. Call Thomas Smith this week, she whispered. I frowned. Who? But Mom was already moving toward her. Mom, you shouldn't be standing this long. Grandma tried to speak again, but Mom guided her away before she could say more. Still, before disappearing down the hallway, Grandma looked back at me. And for some reason, I knew that look mattered. Dinner started soon after. Dad stood and tapped his wine glass. Family is everything, he announced proudly. Everyone smiled. Everyone nodded. Then came the gifts. Mom handed Vivian a thick envelope. For you and Marcus. A 14-day luxury Caribbean cruise. The room exploded. Applause. Gasps. Excited laughter. Vivian cried instantly. Oh my God. Thank you. She hugged Mom and Dad dramatically while everyone watched. Then Mom turned toward me. The room became quieter. Audrey, honey. This is for you. She handed me a thin envelope. Inside was one single Mega Millions lottery ticket. $2. Mom smiled coldly. This seems more appropriate for your situation. Someone laughed. Then someone else. Marcus leaned back in his chair smirking. Luck doesn't help much when there's no brains behind it. More laughter. Vivian giggled. Maybe she'll win $5. My face burned. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. But instead, something inside me cracked. Like a chain snapping. Like years of humiliation finally becoming too heavy. I smiled calmly. Thank you, Mom. I'm sure it'll turn out exactly how it's supposed to. Nobody noticed the edge in my voice. Except Grandma Grace. Suddenly she stood up. You cannot treat Audrey this way. The entire room froze. Dad looked embarrassed. Mom rushed toward Grandma immediately. You're tired. I am not tired, Grandma snapped. But Mom ignored her. She guided Grandma toward the guest room while everyone pretended not to stare. Before disappearing down the hallway, Grandma looked directly at me again. Then her eyes shifted briefly toward her old leather handbag near the window. The one nobody was allowed to touch. Something about that moment stayed with me. Hours later, after most guests left, I cleaned the kitchen alone. As usual. Vivian and Marcus sat in the living room laughing over cruise plans. Mom and Dad walked relatives to the front door. I carried dishes past Dad's office and noticed papers spread across his desk. Normally I would have ignored them. But something stopped me. I stepped closer. My heart immediately started pounding. Debt notices. Collection warnings. Overdue bills. Then I saw the loan agreement. $180,000. Borrower, Gerald Crawford. Cosigner, Marcus Pierce. The interest rate made my stomach turn. It looked illegal. I flipped another page. Then another. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. Grandma Grace's house was listed as collateral. No. No, no, no. My hand shook violently as I grabbed the papers. There was Grandma's signature. Weak. Uneven. Barely readable. Dated during the same week she had been hospitalized after her fall. The same week she was heavily medicated. They made her sign while she was drugged. My chest tightened with rage. I pulled out my phone immediately and photographed everything. Every page. Every signature. Every lie. And suddenly I understood something. The favoritism was never really about love. I wasn't the forgotten daughter because I lacked value. I was the dangerous daughter. The observant daughter. The one who noticed cracks. The one who asked quiet questions. That's why they kept me small. That's why they laughed at me. That's why they wanted me invisible. 1 week later, I called Aunt Marlene. The moment I mentioned Dad's debt, she went silent. Audrey, she whispered, don't talk about this on the phone. Fear rushed through me. Why? Because Marcus is not who he pretends to be. We met at a coffee shop that Saturday. Aunt Marlene looked exhausted. Like she hadn't slept properly in months. I should have said something years ago, she admitted quietly. Tell me the truth. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Marcus isn't really a consultant. He lends money to desperate people. Illegal loans? She nodded slowly. There's more. Then she pulled out her phone. The messages were between Marcus and a woman named Diana. Romantic. Explicit. Cruel. One message made me feel sick. She served her purpose. Once the house deal closes, I'm leaving Vivian. I stared at the screen. He's cheating on her. For 8 months. I leaned back slowly. Suddenly my anger toward Vivian shifted. She wasn't evil. She was blind. Blind because being the golden child had protected her from reality for years. That night, I noticed the lottery ticket sitting forgotten on my kitchen counter. Still crumpled. Still ridiculous. Almost angrily, I opened the Mega Millions app. I entered the numbers. The first number matched. Then the second. Then the third. My breathing stopped. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. I refreshed the page. Again. Again. Same result. $100 million. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there frozen. The tiny ticket shook in my hand. The same ticket they used to humiliate me. The same ticket everyone laughed at. Now it was worth more money than anyone in my family could even imagine. But strangely, the money wasn't the first thing I thought about. I thought about Grandma Grace. And Thomas Smith. The next morning, I called him. Thomas Smith sounded older than I expected. Calm. Professional. Warm. The moment I mentioned Grandma Grace, his tone changed. She told me you might call someday. I met him at his office the next afternoon. Old books lined the walls. The office smelled like leather and paper. Thomas opened a folder and slid it toward me. Inside were trust documents. Bank statements. Legal paperwork. 10 years ago, he said softly, your grandmother created a trust fund in your name. I stared at him. How much? $500,000. The room tilted. She never told me. She was afraid your mother would take it. Tears burned my eyes instantly. Grandma had seen me all along. Thomas continued carefully. There's more. About the house. I showed him the photos from Dad's office. He studied them quietly. Then he sighed heavily. We believe the property transfer may qualify as fraud. My chest tightened. They stole from her. Likely, yes. He leaned forward. With your resources now, you have options. Options. Nobody had ever used that word about my life before. Not once. For the first time in 32 years, I had power. Real power. Not because of revenge. Because I finally had freedom. I want to protect my grandmother, I said firmly. Thomas smiled slightly. Good answer. I told nobody about the lottery. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Vivian. Nobody. For days, I walked through life carrying a secret bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, my family kept treating me exactly the same. Like background noise. 2 weeks later, everyone gathered again before leaving for the cruise. I wasn't invited as a guest. I was invited to help prepare. Audrey, arrange the flowers. Audrey, help the caterer. Audrey, make sure Grandma's nurse has instructions. I did everything calmly. Silently. Nobody noticed I had changed. Nobody noticed the lawyers working behind the scenes. Nobody noticed that the quiet daughter now held enough money to change every single life in that room. At dinner, Marcus bragged endlessly about the cruise. Private dining. Spa treatments. Exclusive excursions. Then he smirked at me. Maybe next year you'll buy another lottery ticket. Everyone laughed. Again. I smiled politely. You never know. Luck surprises people sometimes. Mom raised her wine glass proudly. To family. I almost laughed out loud. The morning they left for the cruise, I stayed home. Mom complained about it the night before. You can't even come say goodbye? I have work. She sighed dramatically. Always work with you. As if work wasn't the only thing they ever valued about me. While they boarded their cruise ship, I sat in Thomas Smith's office finalizing paperwork. After taxes, I would receive around $62 million. Enough money to protect Grandma forever. Then my phone buzzed. Vivian. Dad's card got declined at the port. Can you send $500? I stared at the message. The irony almost made me laugh. The first time in my entire life that Vivian asked me for help. I typed slowly. I don't have it right now. Ask Marcus. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Never mind. That told me everything. The financial collapse had already started. Day 3 of the cruise, I posted a simple Instagram story. Just a picture of Grandma Grace's house. Caption. Home renovation project starting soon. I knew Dad would see it. That same day, local news announced the Mega Millions jackpot winner had claimed the prize anonymously. The ticket came from the exact convenience store where Mom bought mine. The family group chat exploded. Cousins joked about becoming rich. Uncles talked about retirement. Then Mom privately messaged me. Audrey, you still have that lottery ticket, right? I waited an hour before answering. Yes. An hour later, my phone started exploding. Mom. Dad. Vivian. Marcus. Call after call after call. I ignored every single one. By midnight, I had 79 missed calls. The voicemails became more desperate every hour. Audrey, honey, please call us. We need to talk. This is important. Then Marcus left a voicemail. We should discuss investment opportunities. Family helping family. I almost laughed. The next morning, I texted the family group chat. Video call tonight at 8. Everyone needs to be there. Replies flooded in instantly. They thought they had finally won. They thought their forgotten daughter was about to save them. At exactly 8 p.m., I joined the call. Their faces filled the screen. Tropical sunset behind them. Expensive drinks on the table. Mom smiled too brightly. There's our girl. Dad nodded eagerly. We miss you. Vivian waved. Marcus watched silently. Carefully. Dad leaned forward first. So, we heard some interesting news. I looked directly into the camera. Yes. I won the lottery. Chaos exploded instantly. Oh my God. How much? This is incredible. I waited until they quieted down. Then I answered calmly. $100 million. Silence crashed over the call. Mom looked dizzy. Dad's mouth fell open. Vivian covered her face. Marcus recovered first. That's life-changing money, Audrey. You're going to need financial guidance. I already have a lawyer. His jaw tightened slightly. Then I spoke again. But before we discuss money, there are things this family needs to see. I shared my screen. The loan agreement appeared first. Dad went pale instantly. Audrey. This is a predatory loan agreement between Dad and Marcus. Nobody spoke. Then I showed Grandma's property documents. She signed these papers while heavily medicated after hospitalization. Mom started shaking. Dad looked sick. That could legally qualify as fraud. Marcus stood up suddenly. You don't know what you're talking about. I ignored him. Then I showed the screenshots. The messages with Diana. Vivian's face completely shattered. Marcus turned white. These are fake, he snapped. I looked directly at my sister. Vivian, ask him. Her voice trembled. Marcus, tell me she's lying. He didn't answer. That silence told her everything. Vivian started crying immediately. Real crying. Broken crying. Mom began shouting. Dad buried his face in his hands. Then I delivered the final truth. I'm paying off the debt and restoring Grandma Grace's house legally to her name. Dad looked up desperately. Audrey, we're family. Family doesn't steal from 90-year-old women. Nobody answered. The silence felt endless. Then I ended the call. My apartment became completely quiet. No cheering. No triumph. Only exhaustion. A few minutes later, someone knocked on my door. Aunt Marlene. The moment she saw my face, she hugged me tightly. You did the right thing. Did I? I whispered. I just destroyed my family. No, she said firmly. They destroyed themselves years ago. You just stopped protecting their lies. My phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. I didn't know about Diana. I swear. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at it for a long time. For the first time in years, I actually believed her. 2 weeks later, Thomas called with good news. The bank agreed to reverse the property transfer after reviewing Grandma's medical records and witness statements. I paid every cent necessary to save the house. More than $200,000. I didn't hesitate once. Then I added one final condition. Permanent legal protection. Nobody in the Crawford family would ever touch Grandma's house again. Not Mom. Not Dad. Nobody. When I picked Grandma up from the nursing home, tears filled her eyes the moment she saw her house. My garden, she whispered. It was overgrown. Neglected. But still alive. Just like her. I'm going to fix it, I promised. She squeezed my hand gently. I knew you would. Meanwhile, Marcus's life completely exploded. Diana posted everything online. Photos. Messages. Hotel receipts. Videos. Within days, more people started speaking publicly about Marcus's illegal lending practices. Investigations started. Business partners disappeared. Vivian filed for divorce before the cruise even ended. Dad declared bankruptcy a month later. Mom got a job at a grocery store. And strangely, I felt no joy about any of it. Only peace. Because the truth was finally visible. Mom called me weeks later. Crying. Angry. You ruined us. No, I answered calmly. I told the truth. You could have helped us. I could have covered up fraud. We're your family. So is Grandma. Silence. Then she whispered bitterly, you've become cold. I closed my eyes. I learned from you. She hung up. Dad never called at all. Months later, I received a handwritten letter from Vivian. Not asking for money. Not making excuses. Apologizing. Real apologies. She admitted she ignored my pain for years because facing the truth scared her. "You were my little sister," she wrote. "I should have protected you." I cried reading that letter. Not because everything was fixed. Because honesty finally existed between us. We started meeting occasionally. Coffee. Lunch. Awkward conversations. Two sisters learning each other again from the beginning. Grandma Grace moved home in spring. I renovated the house completely. Ramps. Medical equipment. Full-time nursing care. Everything she needed. One afternoon we sat together in the sunroom watching birds outside. "Your mother called me," Grandma said quietly. I tensed. What did she want? "She wanted me to convince you to come back to the family." "What did you say?" Grandma looked directly into my eyes. "I told her you never left the family. They left you." That broke me completely. I cried harder than I had through any of it. Because after 32 years, someone finally said the truth out loud. 1 year later, my life looked completely different. I still worked as a landscape architect because I loved it. My company expanded. I designed public gardens. I adopted a rescue dog named Clover. And most importantly, I created the Grace Mitchell Foundation. Scholarships for young women chasing creative dreams their families didn't support. Every acceptance letter felt personal. Like helping another invisible girl finally feel seen. Grandma and I spent almost every evening together. Some days we talked for hours. Some days we simply watched the garden grow in silence. Mom and Dad still lived across town. We spoke occasionally. Short conversations. Careful conversations. Mom never truly apologized. Dad stayed mostly quiet. Vivian tried harder. Therapy changed her. Truth changed her. Pain changed her. We weren't fully healed. Maybe we never would be. But we were trying. And sometimes trying matters more than perfection. People always ask whether the money changed my life. Honestly, not really. The real change happened the moment I realized something important. I spent 32 years waiting for people to see my value. But they never would. Not because I lacked value. Because they benefited from pretending I had none. The lottery ticket revealed who they truly were. That was the real gift. If you're listening to my story right now and you feel invisible inside your own family, hear me carefully. You do not need millions of dollars to know your worth. You do not need permission. You do not need approval. Stop sitting at tables where people only want you there to serve them. Build your own table if you have to. Choose yourself. That's what saved me. Not the money. The choice. I'm Audrey Crawford. Landscape architect. Dog mom. Granddaughter. Woman who finally stopped apologizing for existing. And that? That was the real jackpot. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?